Hey, it's been a little while since our last color theory video or video in general, but we're going to jump straight back into things and we're going to be talking about split primary palettes. Now, I'm going to go ahead and link the playlist of my other color theory videos to this because must watch, you're going to learn how to make this out of just 3 colors. I'm going to talk about how you even select 3 colors for your primaries, but that's not what this video is about. This is actually about having 6 primary colors. And before we talk all about what that means and why we would want to do that, I think it's important that we talk about color temperature because this is all about having a warm and a cool version of each primary. So what is color temperature? What does that even mean? How do you know if something is warm or cool? Is it as simple as, well, yellow is like the sun, so that means it's warm, and red is like fire, so that means it's warm, and blue is like the ocean, so that means it's cold? That's kind of one way of looking at it. Another way that people like to approach it is they just cut the color wheel in half and they just go, well, anything on this side is warm and anything on this side is cool. That's another way of looking at it. Whether something looks cool or warm is going to depend on what you've got it next to. I also want to add some disclaimers. Everyone views colors differently. We all have different levels of eyesight, of color perception. We have different screens that we're going to be watching this video on, so something might look different to you. I don't want to argue about it. Whatever you think is cool is cool. Whatever you think is warm is warm. I don't mind. I'm not going to die on a hill about it. So I've popped some colors down here for you, a yellow, a red, and a blue. And like we established, maybe these are warm and maybe this is cool. But what happens if we then throw some other colors in the mix? Now, all of a sudden, can you see how a yellow might be warm but also cool? And same with red, how that could be warm and cool, and how blue could actually look warm as well. Now, this is phthalo blue and this is ultramarine blue. If you dive deep enough on the internet, you're going to find people arguing until they're red in the face, which would be a warm color, that this is actually a cool blue, not a warm blue. Let them have at it. I don't care enough to argue about it. It's all about how you perceive it. Much like when I teach the color wheel activity and you have to aim to get these colors, like don't just put 50% of each primary to get the perfect orange, do it by eye. It's kind of by eye here. It's whatever you perceive to be warm or cool. That's good enough. So these are our little candidates that we are going to use for a split primary palette. These are all my handmade paints. So I will list the colors and the pigment numbers in the description, but they're from my own personal range. I will also list the recommended split primary palette from Winsor & Newton. All right, so let's talk about why this matters. Why do we care about color temperature in art? So a general little rule of thumb is that warmer colors should be used for something in the foreground to bring it closer and give it some life and make it seem nearer to the viewer. Whereas cooler colors can often be used in the backgrounds to push things back and recede them. So it's really cool for creating some depth in your portraits. It can also help with mood as well, or perhaps just setting the scene. Let's say you want to create a summery scene, then you would maybe lean towards those warmer colors. And if you wanted to create this moody atmosphere of misty pines, then maybe you'd go towards a cooler palette. So how do you tell if a color is warm or cool? Well, obviously the cool ones are going to be wearing their leather jacket, but besides that, just keep in mind it's all relative. There's not going to be one definitive answer. You can't Google it and find out whether Winsor Blue is definitely cool or definitely warm. It's going to depend what you're comparing it to. And spoiler alert, Winsor Blue actually has a warm and a cool shade of each other in that range. So if we're comparing these two, then all of a sudden we might go, well, this is warm and this is cool compared to each other, even though these are both the cool versions of the colors from our split primary palette. So don't get hung up on the absolutes. Base it on what you're comparing that color to and how you perceive it. Something else that is important with these colors, and you'll see some examples later in this video, is that certain combinations of either cool and cool, warm and warm, or warm and cool will create different mixes. And some may create muddy mixes. Creating a muddy purple is a very common thing in watercolor. So temperature can be important in terms of what you're trying to convey in your portrait, creating some depth, but it can also be important in color mixing in general. I also want to show you this. So this is my favorite sunscreen brand, Ultraviolet. Wear your SPF, people. And I wanted to show you this because when I got it and I took it out of the package, I was like, ooh, look at this lilac. I'm very matchy-matchy. That is a nice, cool color. But then I looked at the box and it's just ever so slightly different. But can you see now we're next to each other, but the box lilac is a little bit cooler than the lid lilac. Can you see it? Do you disagree? Is this going to be like the golden blue dress or whatever, where everyone fights on the internet about it? To me, it's just a very, very touch warmer. So with color temperature out of the way, let's talk about this split primary palette concept. Now, I want to start by saying I don't think that it's necessary that you have a split primary palette. Do you need one? No. Can you have one? Sure. People are going to agree or disagree with me, whatever. I know what works for me, and I have used this color wheel of 3 primary colors for like the last 8 or 9 years, and I've never ironically felt limited by it. Are you going to see different color mixes that seem more vibrant or more beautiful or more versatile in a split primary palette than just this? Yeah, sure. But it depends what you're after. So this here is the color wheel of my preferred primary colors. If I use those warmer colors that I just had out here before, so the same yellow, but a warmer red and a warmer blue, we get some different colors, don't we? So I quite like the greens. They're a little bit more muted, which is good if you like painting nature. The oranges certainly seem a lot more vibrant, and the violets really don't seem all that different to me. I can definitely see the difference in the greens though. And then if we have a cool palette, well, we can definitely see the difference in the greens. The cool palette, they look almost artificial, very, very intensely green, and these oranges look duller. So here in this one, we've got my original red and blue, but a different yellow. And the violets are still looking great. So I really like purples. If I had to pick a hierarchy, violets, greens, and oranges are the kind of secondary colors that I like in that order. So I don't really care what my oranges look like. And I kind of feel like the palette that I use is somewhere in the middle of these two. It's not too artificial green, it's not too dull. The oranges are somewhere in the middle. They're not too dull, not too vibrant. So I'm happy with my choice of this palette. But what happens when we shove all of these together and have a cool and a warm version of each in our palette? We get a color wheel that looks like this. So to get the ideal oranges, we want the warm version of the yellow and the red mixed together. Then to get the best greens, we want the cool version of each other mixed together. And to get the best violets, we want the warm blue and the cool red mixed together. So we're just splitting these in half and only combining those. And you know what? It's a vibrant color wheel for sure. These are the most vibrant mixes you can get. So I can understand why people would like to have the variety, the 6 of them. They get the brightest vibrant colors. But again, it depends on your needs and your preferences. I don't think it is all that necessary. But that is often the reasoning behind having a split primary. It's just to give you the brightest, most vibrant colors, just to give you more options. These are undoubtedly more vibrant than the ones that I use in my regular palette, and if these mixes are important to you, then you may want them in your palette as well. To me, not so much. I'm painting natural things. I'm painting a lot of animals, a lot of brown, so I'm not too fussed about having this super artificial looking green or this super bright orange. I'm happy with the ones that I have. So ask yourself, what are your needs? What are your interests? And does that palette align with that? Let's just take a look now at some more detailed mixes of these combinations with each other, but also the different ones. You know, what happens if we mix the cool yellow with the cool red? We don't see that from this wheel. So let's dive in. So let's first have a look at the oranges. So what I've got on the side here is my cool yellows and then my warm yellows, and then we're mixing it up. So on the color wheel I just showed you, this is the mixture that you get from them. Very vibrant out of all of them for sure. And you can definitely see this is probably the next most vibrant, and then these two a little bit duller. This is the combination I normally use in my portraits, and I'm perfectly happy with it. But if you love oranges and clean, bright oranges and all the shades in between, then you might want something like this. It definitely gives the best, most vibrant combination out of these 4. Looking at the violets now, this is the combination that you get with the split primary palette. Oh, and I do have to say here, what colors you choose to put in your split primary palette are obviously going to impact the mixes that you get. These are just what I'm getting with my 6, but if you swap just one of those colors out for a different pigment, you're going to have different results, so bear that in mind. But I would definitely say that this is the most vibrant. This is what I normally get, and you know what? I'm happy with those colors. I quite like them. You can see here though that this is when we start to get a little bit muddy and dull, so this may be where your frustrations with mixing violets come from if you've been using a warm red and a cool blue. I will say, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I am more of a modern color wheel girly, so my reds are not like fire truck red. My normal red is normally a magenta, and this still isn't as red as you could go. So if you had something in here like a scarlet red and you mix that with a cool blue, you might get even dirtier, filthier, muddier purples. this is definitely like not the worst you could get. But you can see here that this combination is definitely quite dull. But with the warm and warm, we also get an interesting combination as well. So cool red, warm blue, warm red, warm blue. Very nice. And then finishing up with our greens, we had cool yellow and cool blue as the combination on the split primary palette. Again, looking quite artificial. Now, is this the worst case scenario? Absolutely not, because what you can do with bright colors is dull them down. All you have to do is add a little bit of their complement and you can take away their artificial, vibrant craziness if you need to. So I can understand why people want to split primary, because you can always dull that down. You can't brighten these duller ones up. So I get that, but I don't feel like I ever need them anyway. So I'm not fussed, but it's definitely giving you the most options when you use a 6-color split primary. So these are the ones we've got on that split primary wheel. These are the ones I normally use, so they're looking just a little bit more natural, and so they really call me. I like these, but these are actually quite beautiful as well and more natural looking than here. But like I said, you can always dirty and dull your colors, your bright, vibrant colors. You can't do the opposite with these. You cannot make these more vibrant. They're just going to be duller. That's the lowdown on split primary palettes. Let me know if you feel like this would be helpful in your art practice, or if it's something you already use or will now introduce. If you're really stuck on which 6 colors you need to use, have a Google of the brand that you prefer, because we might use a completely different brand. Maybe you use Daniel Smith or something like that. Generally, the brands, the manufacturers will list online their recommended primaries for both a 3 and a 6 set, but you can always just grab 2 of each. Let's say you've got a massive collection of paints of like 100 different colors, grab some yellows, swatch them out next to each other, see what looks warm and cool versus one or the other. Do that with the other 2 as well, and create your own. There's no rules to this. It's what you want, it's what you like, it's what you prefer, what works for you. Don't stress too much about that. Now, this is all well and good, but how often are we actually painting with just these colors, just the color mixes that I've shown you today? Probably not all the time. So we're going to deep dive into neutral colors and how you mix them from primary colors in another video, because I mixed this background color and browns and blacks all from my original color wheel of just 3. So I'll show you how I mix my neutral colors using just this regular color wheel, but we'll also look at neutral color mixes when we expand to a split primary and see what we get. Given we've discovered that crossing over these lines can give us some more muddier options, maybe we're going to get a ton more better, more interesting neutrals using a split primary palette than just my 3 primary color palette. Hope this was helpful, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.